Okay, folks, good morning. A little bit of a late start today. I woke up later than I've woken up probably in easily 3 years today. I should have been up 2 hours ago. An alarm is set, but I guess the dream I was having was way too intense, and I turned it off and don't even remember it going off. But those of you that have like food really late and then go to sleep, I don't know how you do it. You must have like you wake up exhausted. That's what it does to me. I didn't even eat late, but I did go to sleep pretty exhausted at about 11, which is normally enough time for me, but I guess it wasn't tonight. Anyhow, on to the good stuff. As soon as we find the Russian green, we've got these two T-70 tanks that are here from Plastic Soldier Company that we went ahead and painted these with the base Russian green color, and I bet this is it because this one's sticking out and it normally is not. That's correct. Not that it makes that much of a difference if I use reflective green. They're not that different from each other. Probably only I would know the difference. And we're going to give them an overall dry brush. So we sprayed these black, we dry brushed this color on them, we gave them an Agrax Earthshade wash, and they dried. So now we're going to go back over this and dry brush them, and it's just having that little brown wash on them just gives them a little interest in discoloration, just slight discoloration that keeps them from being a uniform color. And I got the idea from a YouTuber. I don't remember what his name is. Might be Sonic Sledgehammer or Sonic Sledgehammer Studios or something like that. Everybody's got good ideas. I mean, I look at a lot of videos and I'm like, I don't like the end result of that, or maybe you do, but I actually liked his tanks that he did. In this case, it was Sherman's, and people got other things you can learn from. We don't all have all the answers, so. Especially when I was just getting back into doing vehicles after a hiatus of 20 years. This is the right green, isn't it? Yeah. Russian green. Okay. It's not like I hadn't been painted for 20 years. I just hadn't been doing dry brushing and stuff like this to this level. Not everybody's an expert in every field, so. And sometimes you are, but it adds concern where there shouldn't be any. There's one modeler that's on there that, and I mentioned this before, it might be somebody like Plasmo or somebody who's just like a miracle worker with tanks. And then they did a video and they were concerned about, because I guess they never paint figures, and they were concerned that they didn't know what they were going to do. And I was just, I was watching that and I'm just chuckled and I'm like, come on, man, figure it out. You can do it. Vehicles are a lot harder to do than figures, I think. The tank commander I did yesterday, I think I did him in 30 minutes or something like that, maybe even less than that. It was pretty easy, but figures don't really scare me. I got a lot of experience doing figures, at least in 15 millimeter and 20 millimeter scale. I always say I would take a really long time doing a 28. I probably wouldn't take that long, but again, it's one of those things that I've never done, so I'm a little concerned about it, but I'm sure they'd just turn out fine. Yeah, we don't want to cover it completely. We want to leave some of this dirt and muck that's picked up from the battlefield I'm sure washing a Russian tank is pretty low on Soviet tankers' interests. That's it. That's all you gotta. That's all you gotta do. Nothing crazy. Nothing crazy. Hope everybody's seen my video that I put out yesterday on the skirmish campaigns thing. If not, check it out. It's a cool book. It's actually better than I was expecting it to be. Had a lot more scenarios that had the Germans in them than I thought. I thought it was going to be, maybe 2/3 Italian and a third German. Which ultimately, if I'm going to do North Africa, doesn't make that much of a difference because I don't have any Africa Corps figures other than the old Airfix 1/72nd scale guys, and I don't think we'll be using any of them. Those useless guys for like surrendering. You're a kid. You're like, why am I getting like multiple figures that are surrendering? Like, I don't want to play with surrendering guys. Are they guys in hand-to-hand combat with a Mauser with a bayonet on it? You don't want that when you're a kid. Or you end up getting that submachine gunner that has an MP41, not an MP40. You're like, why does this thing have a wooden stock on it? I was robbed. I didn't get figures they were supposed to be. Same thing with the standing machine gunner in the German infantry. He's got some wacky freaking submachine gun that I still haven't been able to identify. Like, why couldn't you? Was there a problem like molding MP40s and MP38s? Good morning. Skirmish campaigns. You do my North Africa scenarios in the summertime. Yes, how appropriate. How appropriate. Yeah, I like that one scenario. What was it? Rampaging Matilda. That's just awesome. That's just awesome. One thing I forgot to mention, though, is those scenarios are all made for, if you look at the earlier campaign books, it even says they're made for 20 millimeter scale. And this one, they happen to change it to 15s. So that's funny because with it being all vehicles and stuff like that, I think a lot of the scenarios may be a little bit more balanced than the other ones are. You find yourself in a scenario with you don't have anything to defend against vehicles, you're screwed, but they have their own vehicles. Now, I put all of my names on all of my characters, and I will continue to do so just for the scale of game that I do. I'm going to need to get some dismounted tank crews, and I don't think I'm going to give them any names because I don't need, if I have 4 tanks on the field and they're Panzer IIIs, I don't need 20 figures that are tankers. That you'll never see unless something goes wrong, You'll never see a tank crew running around unless the tank's blown up, I hope I have a liberal amount of coffee. Yeah. Yeah, I was exhausted when I went to sleep last night at about 11. It was movie night, and I went over there, and as always, we could never figure out what to watch. I think because we all have completely different interests. My brother likes comedy. I like comedy too. I just don't like the comedy that he likes generally. And my mom, she's older. She's pretty much fair game for everything. We didn't watch another Bond movie. We were due to watch The second Dalton one, where he's with whatever it's called, License to Kill, the one with Robert Davi in it. And I'm like, I'm just gonna be bored. Not because I don't like that kind of thing or that I don't like Dalton. I just we don't start until like freaking 8:30 at night, and it's just way too late for me. So he suggested to watch a movie that I have already seen once, and was a movie that everybody loves, or many people loved this movie, and I finally got around to seeing it. I think for the first time, maybe 10 years ago. It might have been more like 7. I don't know. It was a while ago, and I didn't dislike the movie, but I wasn't impressed with it. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it another shot. So we watched it, and it's a movie called The Big Lebowski, and I like all the actors that are in it. And the nice thing about me is I'll forget movies because I don't constantly think about them. I don't study them when I'm not watching them, so I forgot most of the details of it. But now I remember why I didn't like it, and I actually enjoyed it quite a bit yesterday. It just went nowhere. Just the first half of the movie was good. The second half of the movie, I'm like, okay, when's this thing going to end? Because there's not enough material here. But it was all right. I almost fell asleep through the whole thing. I think at one point I had to stand up. But it's just too late for me. 11 o'clock is too late. And, if I'm sitting here like painting something, I'm active. If I'm talking, I'm active. But just sitting there watching things happen is just not. I don't know how humanity spends that much time watching television. I don't necessarily mean you guys do that, but I'm just saying most people do. You're not even active. So, anyhow, I guess that threw me off. And then I had the most annoying freaking dreams last night. You thought I'd had like a huge meal. I had this dream that just was like, you ever had a dream where there's a problem in it and you just can't solve it and it's frustrating? And that dream was about trying to find a TV show that was viewable, because not every show is viewable. Some things, with all the streaming services, there still isn't shows that you, or programming you can see. And I was trying to find a program, and it was just hell trying to get. I was running out of time, and I don't know. It was just really, really frustrating. Trying to watch a show, or trying to find where a show was being good Lord, coffee. I was saying, I wish you could make tea with as much caffeine content as coffee. I would just give up coffee. I don't really like the taste of coffee. It's the energy that makes things happen. Liquid motivation. Actually, I don't need that much coffee this morning, Jack. I slept extra. Okay. That's probably good enough. I'm not going to install that on there, but we can put it over there. Not a movie buff at all. Don't even own a television. You're not missing anything. Give me a good radio play or book any day. I can't say I've ever listened to a radio play, but I do like. I do quite a bit of Audible, so I do listen to books that way. I'm almost done with my latest Eastern Front offering, so I'm going to move on to another one. And that's what I used to do when I used to paint, but I'm like, I'd rather hang out with you guys and do a monologue than just sit there and listen to somebody else go on and on about a book. Because I can always do that while I'm driving. I can always have that in the background, which I don't do a tremendous amount of driving, but 20 minutes to work, 20 minutes home. It's actually less than 20 minutes. It adds up. You get things accomplished, but One thing I forgot to look up is the inside of this Russian hatch going to be white? Because the inside of the tank is, but if I don't look that up, I'm just going to leave it in. I'm just going to leave it in green. Because like the German tanks, I looked up and they weren't on the inside of the hatch so they were when they were crew exposed, the inside of the hatch wouldn't stand out like a sore thumb. So we're going to assume that the Russians did the same thing. Makes sense. You have this thing open and it's not glaring at you like, come take a look inside. All right, while this is drying, which it doesn't need to dry very much, I'm going to go ahead and paint the bases of these because these do take quite a bit of time to dry. So let's go ahead and drop that thing in there for the time being. And let's get our chocolate brown, which should be there, unless it's this one, and it's not. You're not a fan of the BBC, but they do have an extensive library of radio plays from way back when. I have listened to some things on the BBC, and they don't bug me. But then they might be better than the news organizations we have here. I think news program got a lot worse when it went 24/7. You create problems that don't exist just for keep people's interest. Same thing with like Google. I'll turn on my phone in the morning and it'll be all these news stories I have no interest in. You know, they make things look important. They'll put people's names on there I've never heard of. I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't listen to celebrities. Celebrities I've never heard of. Where did that chocolate brown go? It's, I'm sure, lurking around here somewhere. One of the most useful colors I have in my armory of colors. Well, that's both of those. Is it this one? Because it sure doesn't look like it. Nah, it's flat earth. All right, we'll use this one. This is the old one, and I just don't have the heart to throw them away. There's always something in there, but adding something to get it out doesn't work really well. Two. That should be enough. All right, and we'll leave the last one off, and I'll tell you why when that happens. Now, there's a specific brush that I happen to use. Here she is. Ankinaru. There you are. Hey, building your people's tanks. Or the people of the place where you live's tanks. These are cute tanks. And yes, tanks can be cute. And some tanks can be ugly. Cute tanks. T-70s, honeys, Hagos, those little Japanese piece of shit little riveted guys. They're cute. So you have extra here, so we're just going to come in here and add to that. I didn't do it this way. And then one day I'm like, man, why is it taking me so many times to go grab paint? How about I just put it on here directly and then just move it around? Like, yeah, that saved me some time. Okay, that one's done. Let's not put it somewhere it's going to get it messed up. You're painting bases by dripping paint directly? Yes, on these, yeah, to get most of it on there. Yeah, I just put a couple little dots on there and just speeds the process up. Because this is something that just shouldn't take as long as it does. And I want to get it all the way into the crevices of this. This is kind of a grainy material. And I want to make sure that we get it in there so that it doesn't show. And I don't seal the bases. So, and I've never had a problem with it. Because if I did, I'd have to do it before I put the tank on them. I don't want to. I go very unliberally with the dull coat on the tank. Because if you go liberally, it can affect the finish underneath. It's happened to me before. Thinner is definitely better. Start behaving weird when you do things like that. There's 2 down. That's going to take a little bit of time to dry. And now, we'll just put some more of this. Come on. It's reaching its end. All right. Ain't nobody got time for that. No, that one's not going to work. We need one with some more grippage. It's this one. All of my basing that's been worth a damn, I have learned from other people. These colors in particular I use from the Flames of War site. I don't do Flames of War. Probably never will. I never will. Not probably never will. I never will. I've played before. I'm just not going to. There's worse games out there, but it's just not detailed enough for a World War II aficionado like myself. But they have some great ideas on their website. Their website's excellent, including history of different units and stuff. You know, there's a lot to like there. Especially the unit history stuff and markings. That's a really good starting point for different things. Like, I was searching around one day and I'm like, you know, I'd love to do British in Italy. Italy's kind of a forgotten area. And people don't really think about it. And I'm like, well, what armor units were over there? And they have a great article on all the armored brigades and their markings and stuff like that. I just dig all that stuff up. So I'm like, okay, that could be cool. So I have a lot of Brit infantry, a lot of Brit late war infantry. Actually, I have a few early war. I actually don't know what the difference is. Is it just the webbing? Anyways, I'm probably going to freely mix them both. Well, I do that with the Germans too. I've got a mixture of jack boots and the short boots. I personally preferred my Germans with jack boots. That's just my preference. All right, and you go in the hole, and then we can put this away. And then we don't do anything else with this color. this thing goes away. The other terrain colors that end up getting dry brushed on the tank are actually the other two colors that are lighter, not the chocolate brown, which is the base color. The way I do it, the way I've done it. A very long period of either using only basic Games Workshop texture paint layer or clear, pure black bases and only trying into something more complex. Yeah, just watch some videos on YouTube. I don't necessarily mean mine. There's people that do basing, and see if you like their end result. And then if you do, hopefully they have a process that's relatively simple to follow. And that's just what I did. I just I like how I like how those turned out. Let me do that. And the Flames of War site is really good from the standpoint that, like, there's an article on desert basing, for instance, that that says, you know, if you want this end result, here's the 3 shades that they dry brushed on up to get you that, so that you don't do all that and then you don't like the end result. And then once you've done it a couple of times, you kind of get the idea, okay, I need to pick 3 colors, but they need to be kind of far away from each other, otherwise you can't tell the difference between them, and you'll figure it out on your own, what works for you and what you like. And you know, some people just slop on paint and put grass on it. That's just, I mean, that's fine until you see somebody else's that look a lot better than yours. You're wondering, I wonder what they did. And then you look, and then they have how to do it, and you're like, oh, I'll do that from now on. But it is overwhelming if somebody doesn't tell you the step-by-step. Some people are out there that and I don't think this is most people, but some hobbyists, they don't want to tell you any of your secrets. Like, oh, you're going to start painting like them. Who cares? You started painting like somebody else. I mean, we all get ideas from each other. It's not a big deal. Oh, I'm wearing a wrong shirt for the grass. This is a synthetic blend, and that static grass loves sticking to this. Okay, so we have these 3 tanks. Let's clear the palette here. And again, an idea that I got from somebody else. I would have never thought about this. Dark sand. And we're going to mix this, not white. We're going to mix this and get some lightening colors on here to kind of bring this thing up. Where is this? And where's this one? The green one, yes. The one that we use for the green just happens to have a green handle. Oh, look at the Irish. Just pure coincidence. All right, even though I put that Russian green away, we'll have to pull them back out. You can hear there's a mixing ball in there that I put in there. At some point, this color was obstinate and didn't want to budge. I don't need to use a wet palette for this. This is just too much paint amount for a wet palette. I will when I get into the detail portion, but not here. And the wet palette honestly takes up too much space when you're using, that was way too much, but just like everything else, we waste more paint than we use. And in case we need to moisten this up a little bit for mixing, 1 drop should suffice of Flow Aid. And I have no problem just mixing them up. I don't need any glue right now. What are you doing out here? Always do the running gear first, because if you mess up, if it's on too thick, it's going to get covered with weathering anyways. I'm actually going to get a different brush for that. I thought I had one here waiting in the wings. That one's a little too big. Here we go. Let's use this one. Got some of these areas I can't get into quite with the big nasty. This has got smaller areas in some other tanks. That dried up fast. I saw somebody in a video recently that mentioned what I always like to think, but I don't know that if I say it, but don't try to do too much with one dry brush level. Just build it up slowly, because if you overdo it, then you got to repaint the whole thing to redo it. So and this isn't necessarily lighting at this point. At this point, it's just almost kind of like discoloration of it. So I don't mind having some of this, in a crevice, because we're going to come back and do the actual highlight. We're going to add more of this color to it and do the actual highlight. So here you can kind of see the difference, kind of, because this lighting is ideal for me, not necessarily ideal for you guys watching. I struggle with the things that I paint. A scale of 1 to 10 of how I'm happy with them, I'm almost always a 9.5. However, when I take photographs of them, I'm usually about a 3. I am not a good photographer. I know what to do, I just can't do it. Or I think I know what to do, I just can't do it. I watch videos, I'm not patient. I'll take a photo like 6 times. If it doesn't come out in 6, well, that's what you guys get on the internet. I don't have the patience for that. I have the patience for a lot of things. I have a lot of patience for a lot of things that people don't seem to have the patience for. But tinkering with the lighting, I don't like tinkering with the photo settings, because I feel that if I'm tinkering with the photo settings, you guys aren't getting a real photo of what it looks like. I don't want to doctor up the photos. That's not what they look like. So, anyhow, I don't have the patience to spend 30 minutes editing one photograph. So, that's why I always say they look better in person, because I'm a shitty photograph taker. I'll admit it. So, and most of it is focus. This day in 1879, the Zulus defeated the British at, boy, that's a difficult word to say, Isandlwana. Mr. Skylab from Utah. I don't mind that colonial period, but Europeans and natives fighting each other just seems a little too uninteresting to me. I was earlier last year. I thought I was going to get into the period, but I decided to get back into World War II instead. I can't do everything. I really can only do one thing at a time, or I won't have enough of that one thing to really justify going off into something else. So we just went back to our World War II roots, and we're going to be here for 2023 for sure. You got lots of stuff to do, and I got lots of stuff I want to do. It's not like I get up and I'm like, oh man, I got to paint more knights or whatever. And I don't want to sound like that's a bad thing. I mean, they turn out great, the ancients and medievals that I do. I'm really happy with them, but I'm ready to do something different. Try to keep this during photography, helps with focus greatly. Works mostly for solo miniatures, have little practice taking shots of big armies. Yeah, I just need to take pictures outside. I just get lazy. There's many times when I take photographs that I'll take them at the end of a painting session that I have to stop abruptly because of having to go to work or something else. So I don't have extra time to sit around and take photographs of them. So I just quickly take a snapshot, and that's what you get. You know, I'm not a photograph junkie. So not everybody has patience for everything. So all right, let's see if they look equivalent. There's a big slop of something. You'll end up not seeing it, but okay. The 3 turrets. And just like, I don't have the patience to sit there and make sure you wash all your plastic parts on the model. F that, I'm not doing that. Then I got to do that, stop what I'm doing, dry them all off. There's a little bit of, no. Yeah, everybody's different. Some people have time for that, and then they don't have time to do the fine detailing that I happen to like. So it's your hobby, it's your model, you get to decide how to do it. I, for the longest time, didn't prime anything. I just do the priming just so it's the same black canvas that we start from every time, just for consistency. I just do this for, as the trendy word is, modulation, which did not exist as a term, as far as I was aware of, 20 years ago when I was doing plastic models. Modulation. But we don't leave it like this, because this is just kind of haphazard. There's things that we definitely want them to stand out, edges in particular. So we go in the next step and really tinker with that. Now, one interesting thing about the desert is going to be, whenever I do desert vehicles, one of the colors I use to mix in, this one, is the base color of many British vehicles. So that's going to be interesting. So we're going to have to do one lighter on that one, but I am certain I will be able to do it to my satisfaction. Of course, I have no desert infantry. And if you're doing something like Africa Corps in particular, man, their uniforms are going to be all kinds of different shades. Because like their Corps uniform is a very dark color, but that didn't last long. You know, almost like this. It isn't quite like that, but at least that dark. All right, now let's put this away. Let's get the wet palette out. Let's find out where we left it, because we're going to have to do a pickup in here because this is driving me crazy. Oh, I forgot I got those T-35 and the two T-28s that I'm going to do. Even though they're 187th, I'm going to paint them up. I got nothing to lose. Man, where is it? Did it end up over here? Yep. See, can I safely put this on here? We're not going to get paint all over the bottom of this that we could transfer somewhere else. Maybe. All right, here is Russian green corner. As you can see, we still have some elements that are lurking. I haven't put water in the sponge in such a long time, and it seems still to be kicking. This green's not okay, but the sand seems to be, so we're going to roll with it. And this is where we actually use some pretty fine brushes. It's probably the one we should use. And we are going to need some flow aid for this. 1 drop of flow aid. Even though if you read the instructions, which I don't, but 1 part for 20. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I don't need that much. We just need to, this is just re-wetting drops. Yep, that color seems to be just fine. And I'm going to attempt to go up 1 level lighter than this dry brushing I just did. Okay, Canaru, see you next time. And I test that with an edge. So I'll come over here to find an edge that's really prominent that I'm going to want to highlight. And I go, that's way too bright. That's way too bright at this point. I think that's a little better. Maybe. Anything that has an edge that you want to stand out. Any place where the light is going to hit it, it's going to show like a change of direction. I like to run this across it. And it's going to kind of happen again on its own when we get to the dry brush phase. There's a lot of these things that the edges are going to catch those lighter dry brush colors and help them stand out also. This can be scrapes that almost went through also. So I'll occasionally like to put some scuffings like that on the armor, which are actually not that significant because remember, we're going to dry brush over that as well, but they sometimes show through and it just keeps it from looking consistent. From just being a big blob. And this takes only a little bit of effort to do this. But that flow aid is really handy to keep your paintbrush loose and keeping it from, like drying out and catching on stuff. This is that spare road wheel that's there. Periscope. Not everything, but just some things that in my opinion, need to stand out. And then just to be consistent, we're probably going to roll into the turret of this particular vehicle and do the same thing. Okay, Jack, thanks for stopping by. Sorry for the late start. That one time I overslept. I don't like to do things like that. I don't like to say, hey, I'm going to do this, and then I don't do that. Because I hate it when people do that to me. And literally, I have my alarm set for 5 a.m. every morning. I don't change it. But I guess I was busy fighting demons all night. I must have turned it off. I just went back. Just rolled over and went back to bed. I want this to stand out in the corners. This is very, very little paint. And I like to grab by the end of the barrel so that I actually inadvertently rub some of the green off just by turning this around, and then I don't have to paint it smoky color. So remember, the bottom color here is black. So if I rub off all this paint accidentally, I'm left with a smoky color for the tip of the barrel, which is what I want anyways. You don't need to push it all the way in, just seeing how this fits. And color-wise, and as I like to say, I need to step away from it. Yeah, that's not bad. I may go up another level. I am gonna go ahead and do that. I want to make sure that we catch some of these like bolts and things. I like using the edge of the paintbrush for this. about any of these kind of highlights on the bottom part of the tank, that's going to be heavily covered with dry brushing. And of course, I could have forgotten these braces for the fenders. Okay. That's done for now. Uh-oh. Cheap brush. Royal Majestic. Yeah. Royal Majestic, my ass. This one has road wheels that are going to be black and things like that. A couple little details. Got this muffler, it's on the outside. It's very rusty. I think all those pipes end up getting rusty. We'll have to do a reference check on that. Now, we didn't start this light on all the colors. So remember, we lightened it up for that final one there. So let's back it down a little bit. Yep. So if you apply these colors a little watered down, not super watery where it's going to go everywhere, but a little watered down, it adds some transparency and it helps them. The difference between one color and the next is a little bit more subtle. Man, I'm yawning a lot. This coffee's really ineffective. Six folks, good morning. Happy Sunday. I thought it was going to be a rain day. What's that temperature out there right now? It says heavy rain. Liars. 59 degrees. I'll take that every day. I'd actually like a high of 59. Although I did experience something here I've never experienced before, and that was it was too cold to spray. It might not have been, but I was concerned about it. And I'm generally not concerned about the temperature, but it was just extremely cold that day for here. It was less than freezing, and I'm like, that's probably not a good idea to spray. It's not going to come out of the can well. Utah will then be below freezing for most of the week. And is it dry there? When I went to Utah, it was extremely dry. Extremely dry. Actually, the one time I went to Utah, it was in March, and they had a lot of snowfall that year. Fortunately, we wouldn't have gotten to see any snow, but there was still plenty of snow, and it was so dry I could have worn shorts. I mean, you still have to put something on your chest, but I mean, leg wise. And I remember I went snowmobiling for my first and only time. Only time because not because I don't do it again, but because I've only done it once. And I remember thinking, there must be thousands of people that die on snowmobiles every year, because I was careful, and you're like precarious all the time. I don't know that we went anywhere I would call dangerous, but still, I know how some people are. They're just not afraid of going to the hospital. And I've only been to the hospital one time, and that's when I was born, and I'd like to keep it that way. But I remember thinking, these things are really unstable. The back end, you got this little track that's not much wider than this, and it's carrying two people on it. This season, we're getting all kinds of snowfall. Hoping and praying this is the start of the end of the drought. Yeah. And Colorado, too, was super dry. When you have to drink water or you get a massive headache, no. And I just go there on vacation, so I never have to shovel it. But I've never been skiing, and I don't think I'm past my prime. It's just is not something I'm gonna develop a skill set for. I'm just gonna be paying a lot of money to get hurt and not have a good time. I needed to have done it 30 years ago. I didn't have the cash flow 30 years ago to do it, so. But it is absolutely beautiful. And kind of like another planet for us. So last month when I went to New York, It was wet. It was cold and wet, so that's what I like. Now, it was pretty freaking cold because it was wet, but I didn't get a headache because I didn't dehydrate, so. But the worst thing about the cold weather for me is all the sissies that run the heater. You know, you're dressed like for being 30 degrees outside, and you come inside and they have it at 75. That's a 45-degree change, and what am I going to do with all these clothes? You know? I'm not necessarily talking about, your bedroom or where you take a shower. I'm talking about, just like a business. You have a business. Why do you have the heater at 75 when it's in the 30s outside? Should like not even run it. What would it normally go to? If you didn't run the heater at all, it's not going to drop to less than high 50s, you know, which you could handle if you're wearing like a jacket and stuff. You're not going to sweat to death. Skiing has become more and more expensive, so has the cost of medical when you break a bone in a fall. Yeah, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. But tubing, yep. Snowmobiling, yep. Snowmobiling is really expensive, but man, that was awesome. It took us to a place up there called Windy. What's it called? Windy something. And there's no cell reception, or there wasn't at that time. So as soon as I got back, I'm like on Google Earth. Okay, where did I go? Okay, went down there. All right, went down that pathway, and I'm a map guy, so I thrive. I feed on that kind of stuff. I put it on my little Google Maps so I could find it again. It was like this basin. There was this basin up that when you're in this basin, it's still each side goes up a couple 100 feet. Like you can't see out. You know you're at the top of a mountain, but you're in a basin. And yeah, it was storybook beautiful. One thing about noticed about skiing people is you go to a place that has ski stuff, and there's a lot of people that are not happy. They got this front, and it's probably because of how much they're having to pay to be there. But a lot of unhappy folks. I was kind of surprised because it's beautiful. Even if you're not skiing, it's beautiful. And you can be outside all day long and you don't smell. You don't smell like the outside, which is notorious for here. And it must be the humidity. I put some scratches on here. But the worst thing about Utah that I experienced was I don't like flying over the Rockies, all that turbulence, and you got have to go over them to get to the backside of them, and I'm not a fan. But that's what they make alcohol for, to chill you out. Everything else was great. That's the first trip we took that we used not extensive, but we you used Uber. And I don't know how many years ago that was, 5, 6. Of course, we didn't have a vehicle when we were there. We just went up to the Was it a resort? I don't know that it was a resort. I mean, it was at Park City, so, there's several different places to go up there, but we didn't have our own vehicle, and I don't feel like we needed one. But it didn't snow on us. I still hadn't had snow fall on me until the following year we went to Colorado. Yeah, skiing is expensive. And more than that is, you get to be a certain age, and I never consider myself old, but there's muscles you have to use there that I don't use on a daily basis. So it's like almost like learning how to walk. It's a bit much for those that aren't in our 20s anymore. This is going to be almost invisible back here because this is the dirty part of the tank, the back and the front. Okay, I think that's good enough for that. Let's pick out some stuff on the turret here. I really need to do some research before I paint this guy, because my understanding is the Soviet tank crews always had like a blue uniform, like blue overalls. But this guy doesn't seem like he has that. Seems like he's got a tunic, and I've seen them with tunic and blue overalls. So I don't know if one's early war, one's later war. I haven't really looked into it. I got a little bit of time because I don't think he's going to get painted today. T-70s came out about December 41. And they used them all throughout the war, but the Soviet tank brigades kind of changed their organization after Kursk. After Kursk, the tank brigades ended up not having the light tanks with them. Sometime in '43, in late '43, they became a lot less prominent. So if you've got like a Soviet tank brigade that was like at Stalingrad or something like that, they're going to have T-34s and T-70s. And occasionally the old T-60s as well. And anything they can get their hands on. But they had both types of vehicles in them. And after Kursk, they were all either T-34s or 45 millimeter cannon in 1944 is not very effective except taking out like German half tracks. Or, supporting infantry when they don't have anything else. When the enemy doesn't have anything else, because pretty much any anti-tank gun will take these things out. PaK-38, 50 millimeter anti-tank gun, these guys are meat. And definitely the PaK-40s. But they started showing up in the winter of 41. And I remember about the time of Kursk is where they started having the Su-76s come out, which is the same bottom chassis as these. I don't think it was T-70s that were converted in Su-76s. I think they were doing both at the same time, but it's still the same 76 millimeter gun that the T-34 has. So it's not like it's a tank destroyer with like a crazy powerful penetrating gun. The 76 millimeter Russian gun is not bad, but it's nothing to write home about. And the 85 is a different matter. But Su-85s didn't come out until, I want to say, early 44. But that's a nasty gun. But this has the same 45 millimeter cannon that's on the BT series and the T-26 series. So the old 46 caliber 45 millimeter gun. So they use these at Stalingrad. There's, I want to say there's pictures I've seen of them dug in. I mean, this thing dug in, this turret is tiny. So that's probably a good tank to, if you got to dig in a tank, you want the tank to have a small profile. Su-76. Su-76 is like, I want to say they put them in either, I don't know if they were part of artillery or, but they used them as tank destroyers. And infantry support both. I'll get some at some point. Probably from these folks, Plastic Soldier Company. But they can't deal with tigers and panthers there, which, you know, aren't that common when Su-76s were around. Tiger 1s were never that common. You know, they started making the Tiger 1s about a year earlier than they did the Panthers. And they built 5 times more Panthers than they built Tiger 1s. So, I think it's about done. Yeah. Oh, why am I so yawny? Open top vehicles make great vehicles to have on a skirmish battlefield because they can catch grenades. And you take a grenade in the crew compartment, you got problems. You got nowhere to hide. It's a great equalizer. If you got a vehicle like this, as weak as this T-70 is, if infantry can't touch this thing unless they close assault it, and then only with certain weapons, they're basically immune. I got a couple of Su-100s. Well, that's a hell of a gun. But that's a vehicle that has like no machine gun. So, you know, if you have it in this environment, you better have infantry protecting it because other than them lobbing an HE shell at somebody, you know, that's all they could do. Just completed one, putting out the first to fight SDKFZ 221. How is the first to fight compare to PSC? Are they more flimsy? Because I find the PSCs aren't flimsy at all. They're really robust. You know, I still can't believe how out of scale these cupolas are on this Panzer IIIs. They're distractingly so. But they'll work fine, you know. I don't know why they got this one so wrong. I suspect that the first to fight are probably similar to the S model ones that I got from China, which are a little bit more finely detailed, slender. I don't know. They're excellent. got excited about possibly getting some more of those if I get into the desert based on that scenario book. But I'll tell you one thing I don't like about the desert is I was all excited about doing the counter scheme. But from what I understand about the counter camouflage scheme, that it was the same for every vehicle. So in other words, if you're painting a honey in a counter scheme, it has stripes that always go in the same place and the top view for every single tank. So that's kind of boring to make it the same for every vehicle. As far as I can understand, that's what it is. Almost kind of like the way U.S. destroyers or U.S. ships in 1944 were. That Measure 32, I think it's the Measure 32, is a beautiful paint scheme with like 3 different colors of grays, but every destroyer is painted the same way. You know, it's not like they look different. So there's not a big incentive in like building more than one because they're all going to look the same way. From what I understand, so that's kind of a bummer. Yes, most gamers misunderstand counter camouflage directives. Yeah, I want to get things right because that's how you learn about it. If I can do whatever I want, I just do fantasy. You know, it's fun to have parameters, but then kind of put your spin on it. Yeah, the first counter scheme was back when in the early in the '80s and stuff when I was involved in doing micro armor. You know, everything out there was like that. It was blue. It was like almost like a taupe. It was the sand color, almost like taupe brown or like this chocolate brown, and like a light sky blue, like the underside of a plane blue. And that's apparently been debunked. And they actually make specific counter scheme paints. But if you go and say you make 4 honeys or something like that, and you want to use counter, the counter is the same on all of them. I mean, could be weathered differently, might give them different nicknames, but short of that. Now, the one thing I really do not like about British tanks is I don't like that red, white, red stripe that's on the side of them. It's just very distracting. I don't care for it. With that said, if I had to build 4 of them, I'd probably put her on 2 of them and not on 2 or something like that. But I did have to look up what the hell a cruiser Mark something was, because I normally know them as A13s or A9s or A10s or whatever. I don't know them by the cruiser designation, but we'll get there eventually. I think the desert stuff's just too cool not to do them. I just don't have any of the stuff. I mean, I can make these Panzer III's desert, but I'm not going to. We need them for Russia. We can get some other ones. We can get the S model ones for the desert. Here's what I don't know. If I'm gonna build and I haven't looked into this, I'm sure I'd come up with the right answer, but if I was going to build a squad of Australian infantry for the desert, right? They just use regular. I mean, they've got that's I call it the safari hat that they use, but not everybody would have one of those, right? I mean, they're probably not supposed to use those in the middle of combat, but some of them probably did anyways. Kind of like the Russians and their little side caps. I remember reading that the Russians had a really hard time getting them to put their helmets on. They like wearing side caps and not wearing a helmet. So if I was going to do a squad of Australian infantry, can I use like regular British infantry, or is there something specific that I need to make them Australian like? It's simple to put together, originally from a magazine part work. Plastic is hard, making the smaller parts brittle. Yeah, I don't think PSC is particularly hard plastic. I thought the Pegasus kits had very hard plastic. I was really worried about some of their barrels breaking off. Working on Desert slowly. Africa Corps is mostly complete for gaming. Now working on 8th Army. I'm not excited about doing Africa Corps. I don't know what it is. I think that to get them painted how I'm going to, they're going to look messy. And I think that's probably what I'm not excited about them. I don't know what it is. It's just not excited about doing the Africa Corps. But I know what'll happen. I'll do one Africa Corps vehicle. Love how it turns out. And I'm like, why didn't I do these before? You know, because I haven't done it before, but I've got a clue. You know, I know what doesn't work. I may not know what works, but I know what doesn't work. So, you know, I know when I'm on the wrong path, or I'm on a path that I'm not going to be happy with the end results. I don't have to complete it all the way to the end and be like, man, this is nothing how I thought it was going to turn out. And I don't mind building all that suspension. I just don't want to cut down and file down all those little parts if I don't have to. You know, I got better things to do than that. Well, I don't mind putting the models together because it is kind of relaxing. As long as you don't have some kind of a timetable that you got to get them done by. If you're just kind of hanging out and chilling, okay. Last one. Let me take a look at something. Let me get more books out of my bookcase that I will put away. These books were very good back in the day. I have about 4 or 5 of them, and these are books by Europa Militaria and Windrow and Green. This one happens to be called Red Army Uniforms and Color Photographs. And this is before the internet really took off. So, you know, if you wanted color pictures of stuff, you needed to get something like this. So let me see if there's a tankers thing on here. Senior charge, tank troops, field dress. this guy's wearing khaki. I guess before I paint that motorcyclist, Soviet motorcyclist, I need to find out why. There's a paint scheme I'll never do. This guy. Although I have a couple of squads of ones that would have like this kind of camouflage. Yeah, I got 4 of them. I got 4 or 5 of them. The one on the SS is particularly good, just because their stuff is really, really complicated. And I've never painted an SS uniform because I was afraid, but I'm not afraid now. I don't like SS guys. That doesn't mean I'm not going to paint them, but well, I don't like communists either, but. Okay, there's this picture right here. This guy almost looks like a field gray, like a German field gray color. During the war, the leather tank helmet was replaced by one made of black or gray canvas. It was also issued for fleece-lined version for winter use. Over the standard field uniform, crews of armored vehicles normally wore an overall, officially in black, but often in gray or khaki, as a result of dispersed manufacture. Some were even made in Canada under Lend-Lease, which was usually worn without the insignia. The holster, made from synthetic leather, was for the Tokarev semi-automatic pistol. And this guy over here is supposedly a lieutenant of tank troops. Tank officers, like their comrades in the aviation branch, often wore items of their gray service dress together with standard issue khaki clothing. This officer wears an issue blouse with officer's badge of rank, despite the order of August 41, have not yet been modified. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to look at different pictures and make a determination. It looks like this guy's got a tunic. It looks like this guy. See, that's how I have a mess. I just throw my book on the couch, and it just collects stuff. Do you intend to build a Covenanter? I do not. I do not. They never saw service. Another reason not to build them. I'm not building a Covenanter. Those Ross and books have actual uniforms, gear worn by actors or reactors. Yeah, I agree. They're not as useful now as they used to be. No, if it's not in this scenario, I'm probably not going to build them. I don't think any of them went in action. I don't know. But, you know, I came across this article, and you might find this funny, Jeffrey. I think this is the problem with the internet, is it gives everybody a voice, even though some people don't deserve one. And I'm not trying to cancel anyone. I'm just saying that some people out there cause trouble and purposefully spread lies. And there was this one guy that was, and I forget what it was. It might have been on Reddit or something like that. But it was funny is because it was posted quite a bit a while ago, and nobody had replied to it. So I think everybody just probably thought, man, this guy's nuts, and it's not worth doing. But we were talking about the Centurion tank. And this one guy claims that they did go into action. 5 of them went into action, and they took out some German tanks, but they couldn't find a Panther or a Tiger to test their gun on, which I think would have been the 20-pounder, 84 millimeter gun. But I think it's more likely that a JS3 or a Mouse went into action. Neither of which did, than a Centurion. The Centurions they made it in Korea, and they were, relatively effective in Korea. I mean, they weren't bad tanks. They were used for a long time. I mean, they're not as sexy as a Chieftain, but so one thing, I like all the cruiser tanks. I don't like Cromwells. I don't like Cromwells, and I don't like Challengers, and I don't like Comets, and I don't know why. I just don't like how they look. And I don't like that 77 millimeter gun that's on the Challenge, the Comet. Doesn't mean I wouldn't build one. I'm just like, I have an Archer. I have an Archer to do, and I was very disappointed that they didn't serve at Market Garden. So I have an Archer that's extremely rustic and not a good model, but I'm sure we could probably make it look decent. So I guess if I have one of those and it's after Market Garden, the Cromwells were only used in the 7th Armored, right? Maybe the 79th had them as well, or the 11th. I don't know. I forget, but I'm not a fan of them. It just seems like they're really crappy for as late as they came out. They came out long. They came out late enough that they should have done something a little bit better with them. Now, 17 pounders are awesome. That is an awesome piece of. That's an awesome gun. That's why I don't like the 77. The 77 came out later than the 17 pounder, and it's not as good. I mean, it's not even close. So, so if you look at stuff on the Western Front as opposed to the Eastern Front, there's a lot of guns. The guns on the Eastern Front that the Soviets have can deal with the German stuff a lot better than the Allies can. Allies have this thing called air power that's devastating. And they got the 17 pounder, which is devastating. But, the 90 millimeters, a good gun as well. But a 76, an Allied 76 just isn't good enough to deal with Panthers on the front. Now, maybe at the ranges that we're talking about in this skirmish game, they will be, because it's basically point blank range, because an inch is a meter, so 100 meters is 100 centimeters away. That's not that far. That's pretty far on the field. So you're going to be in point blank range most of the time. And I'm not putting white stars on my Commonwealth vehicles. I'm just not going to do it. I'm fundamentally opposed to that. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look right. It's downplaying the Commonwealth to a secondary role, in my opinion. It just doesn't look right. The whole point in painting another nation is to make their stuff look a little different. If you're going to make them all look the same, then what's really the point? But that's my crusade that I'm always on. I'm never going to do that. 655 Archers were built from mid-43 end of the war. Some with 30th Corps most later. I saw somewhere where they didn't come into action until October 44. Maybe I've had a faulty thing. Okay, we'll read on that. We'll read about the Archer today, as I'd love to do one in Italy or Market Garden. Specifically Italy. Market Garden is, it just didn't last long enough to really put your hopes in on something, on gaming it. Italy's kind of cool, but now that I'm not going the paper terrain route on the vehicles, I don't know if I want specific Italian buildings, but Italy, the Forgotten Front. And I'm not saying that, that to be disrespectful to anybody that served there. I'm just saying that it's just people don't, people don't think about it. People don't war game it. Right, you get to do Shermans there with First Armored was there with a Rhino. What's not to like about a Rhino insignia? That's really pretty cool. So a lot of those tanks in that scenario book are actually Second Armor Division, which is it has like a medieval helmet as the symbol. So that's kind of cool. But then that Desert Rats, something a little different. And of course, between the losses that they took in North Africa and getting a sizable portion of their vehicles sent to Spain and not Spain, Greece, where they got lost. I think that's the last hurrah for that division. I don't think the Second Armor got rebuilt. I think one reason you don't see them much is that they were with the Artillery Corps, not with the British Armored Corps that used M4 types. Yeah, there's a really good article in the Flames of War website about the armored units that served in Italy, and they do a really good job of breaking down what units were there, the names of the regiments, and and those regimental markings, which can just give you a headache. You know, I mean, they look cool. I mean, the British markings definitely look good and they're colorful, but man, they can give you a headache trying to figure out, okay, is this supposed to have 51 or 52 on it? No, it's actually 56, and we won't be able to hand paint those. Those look too nice. Those deserve decals for sure. But we'll get there when we get there. We got plenty of German tanks to do Italy. I just don't have any Sherman threes. Sherman and Sherman twos for that matter. One thing I haven't even looked at is if the desert basing that I use will look good on the desert map. I don't think I'm going to change the desert basing that I have, that I use for my ancients. I'm really happy with how that turns out. I don't think there's any point reinventing the wheel. And when you take a look at our Soviet numerals, see if we're going to use any of them on any of these vehicles, or we're just going to hand paint all of them. There aren't any really exciting paint schemes for these guys other than winter whitewash, but we're not going to go there. But I got to make room in this case because I got a lot more vehicles than I thought. They're all up against each other, but man, they're growing fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 plus 32. Yeah, this will be 35. So I got 2 T-34s. That's 37. Yeah, but I'm enjoying the living shit out of doing these guys. That's for sure. All right, I need to go get some liquids. We're just gonna turn the mic off, and I'll be right back in a few moments. Okay, it's time to paint some black road wheels and such. The flow aid is hugely important for this. Now this will take a lot longer than it normally would. Oh, turret doesn't want to stay on there, huh? Does now. All right, let's take a look at this. Do these have a rim? They do. So it's going to do half of them, and then we go around the other side and do the other half. And the return rollers up here. The idler wheel looks the same as a regular road wheel. That's strange. All right, now bad thing about these wheels is they are completely cast into the side plate of the tank, which means they go all the way up against that side plate instead of being lifted away up from it. So at some point you have to determine to stop painting it, or you're going to end up having to clean that side plate, the back, the there. So, but that's going to get weathered so heavily that it's kind of forgiving. Not so heavily, because I don't go crazy on it. I still like to see that, you know, hey, that part, that is a part that on the tank is green. Because you'll see pictures of tanks and there's almost like the bottom half of the tank is all the mud colored. That's a bit much for my taste. It's funny, these have a little rim. This one up here does not. Rim around the rubber. So we'll just paint this to the edge then. And likewise, this is, oh, this one's up a little bit from the deck. And I don't paint rubber things in gray because we're going to dry brush this heavily. that if I paint it gray and then dry brush it, it's going to look very light gray. And I've just noticed that in the past. There's no point in doing that. We're leaving it. We're going to paint it black and then we're going to weather it. Machine gun there, which is never consistent. Sometimes on one side of the vehicle, sometimes of the gun, sometimes on the other side of the gun, and then the road wheels on this side. And then the track colors next. I'd like to get these guys done today, and I think that's still doable. I don't know if I could do them all while being filmed. We're going to have to break off at some point, but I certainly would like to do that. Is there anything else in black here that we may need to do? No. No, the mufflers aren't black. Okay. Doesn't look bad. then do the same thing on the other side. And the Flow Aid does wonders for this. It thins the paint, or it appears to thin the paint without losing pigmentation. So the paint's still cover. Helps the brush keep its shape. Let's not forget the little machine gun there. One of these tanks, I don't remember which one, I mentioned it yesterday, actually has the Commander as the loader in it. Which is an unusual arrangement. And I didn't write down what it was. I remember when I first started getting into micro armor, I would buy, this is probably 1986, 86, 87, one of those 2 years. I went to a store. It's actually a chain of stores that they have in Jacksonville, Florida. And I picked up some tanks. And they had some tanks from GHQ and CNC Miniatures, both of them. And they ended up picking up, so I wanted a little bit of everything. So I ended up picking like a pack of M11340 Italian tanks, S35 Samua French tanks, Panzer IV-H's, T-34-85s, and for the British, Bishops. And I played micro armor and looking through the British organization, I couldn't figure out the Bishops anywhere, because the Bishops were used for such a short period of time. They might have been used in Tunisia, I don't remember, but definitely like Sicily, early Italy. And that's just being stupid, just buying a little bit of everything. And most of those tanks I didn't do anything with. You know, that's the only French tanks I ever bought. It's the only Italian tanks I ever bought. Bishops never went into action. That was the first micro armor that I bought. And why did I buy those? Well, they had those in stock. Different times. could look at it as I made those mistakes in my youth, so I wouldn't make them as an adult. Okay. What else is black on this little guy? Nothing? Nothing. Okay. Next thing we'll do is the mufflers. Whoop. Let's not have that problem. All right, let's paint the machine gun. Well, one thing about Italy is the Flampanzer 3s, which they made about 100 of them, if I remember correctly. They were used about Kursk for the first time, and they weren't really successful. They weren't super successful. They were issued afterwards only to one unit on the Eastern Front. The rest of them went to Italy because apparently you had to get real close to use them effectively, and the terrain in Italy was more suited for that than open type that on the Eastern Front that has a. I mean, not everywhere on the Eastern Front is tight, but there's some open ground out there. And I have a Flampanzer 3. Which, to be honest with you, the T-34 design's better. The T-34 design replaces the. You still keep the main armament and the coaxial machine gun. Actually, I don't know if does a Flampanzer 3 still have the coax MG34. I bet it does. Just the main armament gets replaced. Well, we're gonna paint her like she's in Italy, so. I'm thinking. I picked up a scenario PDF book from Two Fat Lardies a couple years ago. Maybe only a year ago. It was a while ago, either way. For their chain of command. And they have one on Wintergewitter, like a mini campaign. Wintergewitter is the failed relief attempt to Stalingrad in December of 1942. And right off the bat, in their order of battle, the Germans can have a Panzer III Flamme, and they didn't have one. It didn't come out yet. So I think that's kind of an obvious mistake. And I'm wondering if something that obvious is in it, I wonder what isn't so obvious that's also in it. And I wasn't going to play Chain of Command. I just wanted some ideas for scenarios. And Just some ideas for scenarios there. Yeah, if they have any Flampanzers, they would have to be Flampanzer 2s, which there weren't very many of. Well, there weren't very many of the Panzer 3s either, but. Okay, there's that. Let's do the little road wheel up here. The spare. So you guys do that? You pick something up, and if somebody misses something that's so obvious, you're like, it puts doubt and makes everything else that they happen to write suspect, or is that just me? Is that my overreaction? Oh, this is the one at the bottom of the hole never got painted in green. Oh, we better. We've already forgotten it twice. I better take that on right now. I better take that on right this second. It's a problem with doing multiple vehicles at once. Okay, that should suffice for now. Ah, lost my train of thought. The train of thought was derailed. Well, after we're done with these road wheels, we're going to cut off. So I see here the girls are awake. And we'll have the tracks to do and the mufflers. And then we can get into figuring out how we're going to number these things. And then the weathering, then it'll be done. Okay, and the spare tire. Okay, cool. So this is where we're gonna stop for the moment. Got these three T-70s, and mufflers and tracks are next, and then they'll be done for some kind of numbering or making them all look individual, and so forth. So, as always, thanks for stopping by, folks. We'll see you.